Notes underneath themes of biology, right underneath listing the characteristics of life, and today we're going to look at two of those characteristics of life in detail. The first characteristic of life is made of cells, and cell by definition is the smallest unit of life. Now we listed some categories up above of atom, molecule, organelle, and you can see some of those organelles in the pictures here. None of those things in and of themselves are alive. Okay, so below the cellular level, things have carbon, they're composed, they have structure and function, but they are not considered alive. There's two categories of cells that we need to break down and look at. Okay, the first one is eukaryotic. This word here means true. Karyote means core or nucleus. So a eukaryotic cell by definition then is a cell that has a nucleus. If you look at the picture here, you also see that inside this cell we have a lot of organelles, and each one of these organelles is surrounded by its own internal membrane. So the second major characteristic of the eukaryote that you need to know is that it has membrane-bound organelles. Which simply means that each organelle is surrounded by its own membrane. The kingdoms that are going to be classified underneath eukaryotic cells are going to be Animalia, or animals, plants, fungi, and protists. And protists is this category of unicellular eukaryotes. We'll talk about this a little bit more in just a second and how we can kind of break that down. The second type of cell that we need to discuss is the prokaryote. The suffix pro means before. Kind of like the prologue in the book comes before the book, or the prototype of something you're making comes before the actual model. So again, this means before core or nucleus. These are going to be cells that lack a nucleus. The idea is that this is the earliest kind of form of life, and it's before the actual internal membranes form. So the second major category, or the characteristic of these, is that they lack internal membranes. You'll notice that there is no nucleus. There is, in fact, what's called a nucleoid. And the suffix oid means like, so this is nucleus-like, but it does not have that membrane. This is simply a dark area inside the cell where the DNA is found. The only real organisms that are going to be classified underneath prokaryotes are going to be the bacteria. Alright, so before we leave cells then, we need to talk about two ways that these cells can be organized. The first one is going to be unicellular. Uni meaning one cell. Okay, so this is all single cell organisms. All prokaryotes are going to fall into this category. Because prokaryotes lack that nucleus, they cannot have more than one cell. They have to remain at this small size. The second category is going to be multicellular. Multi meaning many cells. This has to be a eukaryotic cell. Now the advantage of being a multicellular organism is differentiation. And what this means is that the cells can specialize in both their structure and their function. A unicellular cell has to do all the functions of the organism. All 8 characteristics of life need to be carried out by this one cell. In a multicellular organism, different cells can do different jobs. So for example, skin cells are going to do one function, liver cells, stomach cells, nerve cells, all are going to have their own distinct structure and function. The DNA in each cell is going to be identical, but different genes are going to be turned on or off to give them their specialized job. Now, eukaryotes can be unicellular as well. In fact, that whole category of protist is a unicellular eukaryote. This can then be further divided down into either plant-like or animal-like. Protists that are like plants, we usually refer to as algae. And ones that are like animals, we call protozoa. Both of those, though, again, are unicellular eukaryotes. Fungus, as well, can be a unicellular eukaryote. All right, let's move on to the second characteristic of life, which is going to be requires energy and release is waste. Okay, throwback to your integrated science days. Energy is the ability to do work. Now, more specifically, we're going to be talking about chemical energy. Chemical energy is a form of potential energy or stored energy. This is energy stored in the bonds of molecules. So when we eat carbs, fats, proteins, that energy trapped in them is then digested and released to be used to do work. Free energy is the other term we need to talk about. And free energy is energy that is available to do work. Lots of the energy is going to be lost as heat, and whatever's left over that can actually be used to build things or break things down is going to be considered our free or net energy. Now, there's 2 ways that an organism can obtain energy. One is that the organism can be an autotroph. Auto means self. Troph means feeder. So an autotroph is going to be an organism that produces its own energy. Okay, also called a producer. Now, there's 3 main things that could be an autotroph. The one you're most familiar with is going to be plants. The second one is going to be algae. And the third one, and least thought of, is some bacteria actually make their own energy. Now, there's 2 real ways that we can make our own energy, or autotrophs can make their own energy. The first one is going to be photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, photo meaning light, synthesis meaning to put together. This is the process of taking sunlight or solar energy and converting carbon dioxide and water into chemical energy in the form of glucose or sugar. Organisms that go through photosynthesis we are going to call autotrophs.